So I thought it might be kind of interesting to celebrate kind of a year of this current run of medium quality videos by taking a look in the past, as I am wont to do so very often. But this time, I want to do so by taking a look at live records through the decades. So I've picked one-ish live record to represent each decade in my collection, which I think will be a lot of fun. My name's Adam, and this is Medium Quality. So the best way for me to kick this off, and you know I have to do it because I'm such a huge Yes fan, and that is Yes Songs, the triple LP live album, which in my opinion is the quintessential live performance from what is the greatest progressive rock group of the 70s at what may very well be their creative peak, the absolute apex that this band was performing and writing at. Now, I wouldn't necessarily consider this to be a stellar sounding record, but the songs are absolutely incredible, and the performances themselves are just overflowing with raw musical intensity. You can tell that the group was just on. Of course, if this album sounds a little bit too rough for your liking, you can always try to dig up a copy of this, which is the Progeny Highlights triple LP, which is more or less a reimagining of Yes Songs as an album, consisting of other live performances from the same tour. So it's almost like an alternate reality, a parallel universe version of Yes Songs. I think it would be cool to do a video comparing these two versions of these live performances, but I just haven't added that to my list yet. So you can drop into the comments below. Let me know if that's something that you think would be interesting or constructive, and maybe that will be enough to push me a little close to the edge. Get it? Close to the edge? Like the Yes album. Anyways, moving on, I would say that Yes Songs probably isn't a very controversial choice for a live album to represent the 1970s, at least for someone of my musical persuasion. I think this next one is, and I fully expect y'all to come out in the comments and completely roast me for this one, because my live album to represent the 1980s is Pink Floyd's Delicate Sound of Thunder. Now, I know that Floyd fans tend not to like anything after the band's 1979 masterwork, The Wall, but my hot take is that this is Pink Floyd's best live album, and a very different kind of live album than Yes Songs from the decade before. Delicate Sound of Thunder is aptly titled. It is pristine and polished, and yet for me there's this emotional dynamism to these performances that I have not felt really listening to almost any other live album that I've happened to come across. And when I say that this live album makes me feel something, I mean that these performances have managed to pull me into a deep well of emotions. It's difficult for me to fully describe with words, but this is a really special live album for me. Again, I think it's totally fine if one were to take issue with this choice, but for me, this thing just resonates to my heart. I just think it's a wonderful live album that I go back to every couple of years and just really let it rock me to my core. So going into the 1990s, we are due for a hard left turn from Delicate Sound of Thunder. In fact, on the exact same day as my 12th birthday, in the Sony Music Studios in Manhattan, Ben Folds 5 was recording in front of a studio audience for a public access television show called Sessions at West 54th, portions of which ended up on TV. But this is the complete Sessions at West 54th. This is the entire performance, including the things that were and were not seen on TV. It would be a handful of years after that before I would really get into Ben Folds and Ben Folds 5 during my senior year of high school. But when I heard the complete Sessions at West 54th, I absolutely loved it. It had all of the angsty attitude of the pop punk music that I was really starting to grow out of at that time, but managed to be more musically sophisticated. And then also still kind of managed to be very pop sensible, which makes it, I think, a little bit of a paradoxical sort of release. Whenever I'm so inclined to ride the musical time machine back to the 1990s, this rowdy, cheeky piano pop still holds up for me. And of course, I can't say no to colored vinyl. This deep blue translucent record looks good hitting the table, sounds good hitting the speakers. I can't get enough of it. Going into the early 2000s, my musical taste was really of two minds, where I was really into the culture of DIY music, underground, indie, and my local scene. But my love for progressive rock was still deepening at that time. And for whatever reason, looking at my record collection, I have almost no music from that decade. And what little I do have, I don't think really captures my live music experience from the early 2000s. But I do have quite a few music DVDs. And I grabbed just a few of them because I think they do chart a really interesting musical course for me in that decade. Starting with something like Dream Theater's Metropolis 2000 Scenes from New York. This is them playing that entire concept album that I was really into early in the decade and started to move away from toward the end. It got Rush's Snakes and Arrows. My brother and I actually went and saw Rush on this tour in 2007 in Noblesville, Indiana, I think. And it's really special for me. But then you see the movement toward that hardcore DIY with Thrice's Live at the House of Blues. I wouldn't say that this is a great sounding live performance, particularly Eddie Breckenridge's bass. Sounds a little out of tune to me. I wish they could have fixed that, because this is a really energetic and powerful performance from them. And then, of course, finishing the decade with Transatlantic's World Tour 2010, which I think is really the high point of this progressive rock supergroup's musical career. I think this live performance is actually probably the very best thing that they've done, and the thing that captures the musical essence of their collaboration. I love this live show. And perhaps unsurprisingly, as I started to get into collecting records in 2010 and beyond, my interest in collecting a lot of live DVDs drops off pretty sharply. And there's still not a ton of live music that really typifies that decade for me, but I think one that does is Toro y Moi's Live from Trona. I think this is a very important release for Toro y Moi as an artist, because he started out kind of in the chill wave scene, making this hazy, lo-fi, synth-heavy music, and then slowly started to embrace some kind of hip-hop elements before then going on to really embrace very psychedelic sounds, especially with his very fruitful collaboration with the Matheson twins. And in a way, it kind of marks the end of a certain chapter of Toro y Moi as an artist, and bringing all of those different sounds from all of those songs across all those albums and unifying them sonically and musically. The cover of this live album actually shows the interesting part of this performance, which is that it was not in front of an audience. They just went out into the wilderness and made a live film, basically. And it's a really beautiful looking performance. And it's also, because of the fact that it's not concerned with a live mix for a crowd, there's a real attention to detail to the actual sound of the recording. So it ends up being a really great sounding live performance that kind of balances the precision of a studio work with the energy that you get from a live performance. And of course, colored vinyl, baby. This cotton candy and marble pinkish thing going on here is just delightful and really captures the fun of this live performance. And I want to finish this video with one more live album. This one from the late 2010s, because I think it sort of looks forward to the live music of the 2020s for me. And that is King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizards live in London 2019. I have been a huge fan of King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard for almost a decade now. And what I've started to notice about the band is that they are at their best when performing live. This is certainly no fresh insight for me, but it's almost as though their studio albums are kind of a rough draft, a jumping off point for the real focus of the band's musicality, and that is their live performances. And I think there's almost no better example for me, at least in my collection right now, than this live album from 2019, because the bulk of what they're playing on here are songs from Infest the Rat's Nest, which was their nod to thrash metal, I guess. And I'm not a huge fan of that genre in general. It's just not for me. And as a result, that album is kind of not for me. But when I heard those songs played in a broader context within their discography, highlighted on this live album, it made sense. It worked. It unlocked those songs for me. And I just had a great time listening to this album. The band has really embraced bootleg culture, and they've released a lot of live performances, both officially and unofficially, which I think really just shows how important live performance is to them. And I'm excited to hear more of it in the 2020s. What about you guys? I would love to hear from you in the comments section below. What are some important or seminal live albums for you from any given decade of music? I enjoy the comments section in my videos probably more than even the process of making these videos. It's a lot of fun to learn from you guys, to hear what you're into. And I guess that's going to do it for this video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more, feel free to subscribe. And until next time, keep spinning that good stuff. What a time to be alive.